Well, when I started studying, I think I was a very different person from who I am. I mean, 25 years ago, I started to be in this path. So I think everything and all the people that we knew somehow changed us, and many things that happened in our lives. So when I started studying architecture, and of course these very classics, important pieces of art work that we usually studied, I think my eyes were placed more on the gravity, on creating mass, on studying proportions. And there, I think I learned those values, and I paid a lot of attention on that. But then I started to know, for example, land art pieces in the time, and to connect with artists, contemporary artistic works, like Olafur Eliasson's, or we have amazing artists like Damian Ortega, Gabriel Orozco, and they were doing space somehow. So then I started to understand that deconstruction, unveiling, disappearing, working with wind, with light, was doing architecture too. So I think my learning from the classic was those first values. And then I started to deconstruct the things that at least I pursue in terms of space. And what happened later is that I placed myself, maybe by decision, in conditions of crisis. And Mexico is surrounded by crisis. We have many problems in many ways, but I think I'm also very optimistic, not only as a position, but as an architect. I do believe that architecture is a very powerful tool. And I started to translate those crises into, at least for me, into opportunities to do things. In Helios Park, which is a sportive park, we wanted to open the gates. That was the experience, because the whole block was a sportive center that existed already. It was divided in some courts, multi-purpose courts, and in a baseball field. And let us stand in the street and imagine yourself walking in a whole block with a wall and the path for the pedestrian paths and the cars in a big avenue full of cars. That is you walking in your city. And so for us the first idea was we hate baseball fields because they're blocking the eyes and the views, and this is creating violence. And when you find out in the studies, social studies, violence happen there because nobody's there. So when you find out that, the concept became, to do this public space, I want to create transparency. I want to create freedom. I want to create veils for people to walk comfortably in a shadow, in a transparent spot, where you can see at least grass or garden or an open space, because that's a baseball field, a big voidness, which is behind the wall. So I think on that case, that was a provocation, how we can design something that becomes a lattice. And we can requalify the dignity of the people walking around that space. So it is really complex to find out that every step you do is unique. Every place you work has its own personality. But at the end, maybe the strategies that you want to approach is what is significant. And to make the people feel and be involved in these decisions would be I think the ones that will work for the space and will make it their own. And I think that's the experimentation we're still searching and we are learning from, and we need to keep experimenting. I think that's the answer. The philosophy of the Colectivo is sharing, is a democratical way of taking decisions. And we are not used to do that. We are 5 on the main board, but we are a bunch of architects and different disciplines working together. And I think we trust in each other. And we also raise our hands, and if we are 3, the decision is already taken. And that is a way of letting go things. And I think when you're working in a public space, you need to let go a lot. You need to find out that the work you're doing is not yours, that you're creating a canvas, and that canvas is going to be transformed by the people that is going to inhabit it. And I think in making the people be involved, it's an opportunity to not have all the responsibility on our back. Because it is, at the end, the work we had done is a public work that comes from us, a request of the government. It is not a work of organizations, of ONGs that have a lot of time to be in dialogue with people. So we need to be strategic, and that's a different condition. Our work is not the same as this amazing work of Cooperación Comunitaria or VACA, which they are working with the communities every day for long periods of time. We need to be strategic. We have 3 months to produce, in this program, 3 months to produce an executive project. So on that time, the decision should be very precise. But I think in all the cases, doing architecture with depends on the site, on the community, on the strategy that we want to work with. Our architecture has this sense of being rigid or geometrical in a way. It's an answer to being efficient, I think, but also having a position. When we were designing the Ecoparque, that project is very interesting because when I need to think in how to do architecture in the 21st century, I think that project is a good example. Because the first thing we thought is we don't want to do a building there. Why? Because the first moment we discovered this land was impossible to move around it because 70% of the territory is a swamp, even with crocodiles. Then we thought we need to break those limits. We need to break the limit of someone to have the opportunity to be somewhere else, and not only in a swamp or in a very small beach that was available. So we found out that pushing up this floor that could become a shadow below and just slanting it to let the mangrove happen below and then push attention and create attention to the lagoon so the people then can arrive to the lagoon and swim. That strategy, that simple strategy of doing those things could give an opportunity for people to have a new space in a place that couldn't be inhabited the way it is right now. We had many detractors, many people that didn't want to do it because the people that protects the land usually wants to keep people away from it instead of showing the importance of having it. And the only way people can understand the importance of taking care of these natural protected areas is placing them in a position to see the value of them. So we thought that this path will have the story of the lagoon which has 10,000 years ahead of us, and was the opportunity to showcase and to tell the story of this lagoon to the people. So that's why it had 4 phases. It is not a dead end. It is a cycle. It is perfectly oriented to the north. So it creates a tension with the shadow because of the light. And it moves depending so the mangrove can move below. So for me, the architecture is not only the geometrical piece that we're building, but everything organic that is happening below. And there is the architecture. When I built my father's house, that was exactly the purpose that I was pursuing with what I had mentioned before. And I think the way I designed this house was I walk through this territory every step. It's a very small plot. It took me like 3 or 4 hours walking through it. The site was filled with vegetation and there was just this big stone in the middle of it. I thought it was one stone, but I went to it to see it with my landscape architect. And while we were walking, I said, look at that stone. It's pretty amazing. And he said, yes, Gabriela, but this is not a stone. This is a wave of stones happening. You are over a sea of stones. And there is where again came this idea. I want to design a house that floats, that unsolves these limits of the mountain. I want to lose perspective of where the house starts or where it ends. I want to throw away this vision of just facing the sea and letting a back of the house, which is a big problem that we have as humanity, creating back of the house spaces. And that's why we had forgotten that they are important too. And that is, again, for me doing architecture, to find out those simple stuff, how to make the sea come into the house, how to make the jungle and the stones feel flowing below the house. How can I build something that unsolves the scale of the program and that could disappear and that could wrap spaces that are already there. I love architecture. I love to do private or public things. It's just that I think public things are accessible for much more people, you see? But I think any of those are opportunities to transform and to work with the things that I really care, which is how people connect between each other, how this transformation of space can provoke things or ways we relate to each other, and also how we can relate and connect to a territory that it's already there. I think that is what architecture is for me.